Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday, July 10th edition of the MMAOB Daily podcast. I'm your host, as always, Adam Martin. I'll be taking you guys through the latest in the world of mixed martial arts. First and foremost, guys, follow me on Twitter at MMAdamMartin. This podcast is available at MMAOddsbreaker.com and on our YouTube channel. Please like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate that. Also, check me out at bjpen.com, sherdog.com, MMAnews.com, and MMAratings.net. Quite a bit to talk about today, actually. There was a few fight announcements last night and yesterday that definitely we're talking about, but the focus of the show today is going to be on the Contender Series from last night. Let's get right into it. I mean, what an episode. This was a fantastic episode, especially after the 1-2 weeks ago where there were no finishes, the first time in Contender Series history where there was not a finish. Last night, there was 4 finishes out of the 5 fights, and even the 5th fight wasn't that bad. So, really high-level fights last night. Dana White handed out, for the first time in Contender Series history, 5 contracts. And I think for the most part, they're well-deserved. I thought he was going to give up 4. I didn't think the one guy would get it. I'll talk about him in a second. But he still gave up 5. And, hey, you know what? Good for those guys. They're in the UFC now. And good for Dana for handing out some contracts because I know he probably was really frustrated the last couple of weeks, especially the 1-2 weeks ago where there was no finishes and he still gave it, I think, a contract. But on this card, man, just fantastic finishes, fantastic fights, and like I said, there's 5 new fighters in the UFC. So let's get right into it. I'm going to start from the bottom and work my way up because I think that's the right way to go here. So the first fight on the card was a lightweight bout between Jonathan Pierce and Jacob Rosales, and this was one hell of a fight. What a fantastic way to kick off the card! Just a great fight, fight of the night candidate. If they had a bonus award, it would have won fight of the night. It was a fantastic fight. Jonathan Pierce really took it to this guy Rosales, but that dude was super tough. Hung in there. In the second round, he was eating so many uppercuts. It was absolutely insane that he didn't fall down. The guy was absolutely exhausted in the third round. Pierce was able to get him to the floor and then landed a massive punch while Rosales was on the ground. Huge punch that actually did knock him out for like half a second. He woke right back up, but it was a flash knockout, still a knockout. Fight's over. Great stoppage by Herb Dean, the referee there, and just a great performance by Jonathan Pierce, I think. First round, he did get tagged a little bit, but he really made some good adjustments in the second and third and just took it to this guy, Rosales. You know, I was a little bit worried that Dana White would be like, oh, well, this guy got tagged a lot. He's not going to get a contract. But even Dana, I think, recognized how great of a fight this was. I saw him and Sean Shelby and Mick Mayer. They were standing and cheering for the fight. So they respected what both guys did. Even this guy, Rosales, he lost, but, man, he showed a lot of toughness in this fight. And if I'm the matchmakers, I bring him back maybe next year for another fight. I think he needs to take some time off and recover because he took a beating in this fight. But the guy's very tough. And you know what? Even though he was losing the fight, he was still trying to win. So credit to Rosales. But Jonathan Pierce is a story here. This guy, man, great story, first off. I mean, there's a great story by Loa King out there talking about his past and how he was assaulted outside the gym and he was unconscious and had to like basically rebuild his life. The guy's looked really good since then. Just fantastic young fighter. 5 straight wins now. He was actually in Bellator a couple of years ago and he did a couple of fights in their fight series. And for some reason, they just didn't sign him to a long-term deal. And it looks like the UFC's found a really good diamond in the rough here. So I'm very impressed by Jonathan Pierce. They call him JSP. Guy's good, man. He's a good fighter, and I'm glad he's in the UFC. I'm excited to watch him fight. I think he's going to put on some really good scraps. How far will he go in the UFC? I don't know. Yeah, I think he has a lot of holes in his game for sure, especially his striking defense. He's got to move his head more. But the guy's going to be in some good fights. So I think overall, good signing by the UFC, and I'm excited to see what he does in the octagon. Next up, we had a middleweight bout, man. This was a hell of a fight, too. Maki Khatola versus Justin Sumter, and Maki Khatola just took it to Sumter in the first round, knocked him out with punches to the body from the clinch, just a vicious knockout. Man, this guy went crazy on him. They call this guy the Coconut Bombs. You know, honestly, they had a gambler on the broadcast, the Greek gambler, and he's like, oh, I like Sumter in this fight. I'm going to put some money on him and stuff. I'll be honest, I like Sumter too heading into this one, but clearly Khatola was the talent here. So, you know, a lot of people are giving that guy, you know, just a lot of grief for that pick, but I think a lot of us were picking Sumter, especially when he opened as the underdog. Clearly, though, the odds makers were right, the original ones that opened the fight, because, man, Sumter got his ass kicked in this fight. This was a was a beatdown. This guy Khatola, he gets a contract as well. I think a good signing is, again, 3 straight wins now. Another guy who was in Bellator last year, CFFC veteran as well. He's pretty good, man. I'm excited to see what he does. Yeah, he just beat up a guy that is not UFC caliber, and Justin Sumter. We know that now, but heading into the fight, he was the underdog. So a really good win by Khatola, and Pierce, by the way, was the underdog as well. So the first 2 fights in the card saw underdogs win. So great win by Maki Khatola, man. And I'm excited to see what he does. And like Dana White said, he's too small for middleweight. He's going to move down to welterweight, and we'll see what happens there. But I think he's going to do decently well in the UFC because he has got good striking. He's very aggressive. But we didn't get a chance to see the other parts of his game. So we'll see, because I know, looking at his record, he has been submitted before by Dakota Cochran 2 years ago. Dakota Cochran's not a bad fighter by any means, but he's got to get past guys like that if he wants to succeed in the UFC. Next up, we had a big favorite. I wouldn't say big favorite. At the end of the day, or excuse me, he opened as a Hunter Azure. I'm talking about. He opened as a big favorite, and he closed at the end of the day as a smaller favorite, but still a favorite. And he ended up getting a dominant win here over Chris O'Connor, a tough guy as well, young prospect here. Hunter Azure, 7-0, and he got a contract as well. And I think he was the one guy that people were like, he's not going to get a deal because he didn't finish his fight, but he was trying to finish the whole time. And he looked pretty dominant the whole time with his wrestling. So I think a decent contract as well. Honestly, I think this could have gone either way. If they didn't sign him, I think he would have had another fight maybe later in the season or next year. But they ended up signing him, and I think he'll do decently well in the bantamweight division because he has such strong wrestling. That division stacked. Every week I feel like they sign someone amazing. And this guy is definitely a pretty good prospect here, 7-0 now in his career. So good prospect. Again, a little surprised they signed him because he didn't get the finish in the fight, but Dana White said that he liked the way he was trying to get the finish. And also, I think Dana was just in a really good mood compared to some of the other cards. He was in a good mood, and he's like, I'll just go 5 deals. So good for this guy. He kind of was on the right card, and he was on the right time with all the other finishes. Gets in the UFC despite not getting a finish. Co-main event, another upset. Antonio Tricoli beats Kenneth Berg by first round neck crank. This guy Berg, I mean, geez, like, you're fighting for a job in the UFC. You can't really tap out to neck crank, I think. I mean, yeah, I know it hurts. Trust me, I get it hurts, but it wasn't under the chin, and it wasn't a choke. So to me, he's got to fight out of that, or at least make an attempt to fight out of it. I understand this guy Tricoli had a good squeeze on him, but still, you go this far at Berg, you almost get in the UFC, and then you tap out to a neck crank. That's not a good look for this guy, and I'm not sure if the matchmaker's like that either. So I don't even know if he'll get another shot as far as the Contender Series goes, even though he was undefeated heading in this fight. But Tricoli, I mean, what can I say? This guy is impressive. 3 straight wins now. After he lost 3 straight fights a couple of years ago, he's another guy that is managed by Lucas. That's the guy that I had dinner with back in Brazil 2 months ago with Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker's manager. He's the guy with the hair. He was doing interviews. Great guy. I've known him for actually a while now, so he's an awesome dude, and he's clearly a good manager. He's picking up some really good talent. He's got a lot of guys in the UFC now, and Tricoli's another guy. He got a contract as well. Light heavyweight needs prospects. This guy's 28 years old. I don't know how far he'll go in the sport, to be honest with you, but he does have good submissions, and the UFC liked him, so he got a contract, and we'll see what he does now that he's in the Octagon. And finally, in the main event, Joseph Selecki picks up a first-round submission win over James Wallace. And the line for this fight was very wide, and I thought maybe it was way too wide. Clearly it wasn't. This guy dominated him. A great win for Joseph Selecki here, 8-2 record now. Very impressive young fighter, 25 years old, 3 straight wins. He dominated this fight, and he looked really good. So he's a guy that's fought for CFFC, he's fought for Ring of Combat. I think the guy's pretty damn good. So another good signing here by the UFC. I like it a lot. And again, they signed 5 guys. Dana White, I think, made the good calls on all of them. Maybe not for Azure. I think he probably could have used one more fight, but he got the deal too. So you can't hate on him for that. Overall, though, just a really good card. A lot of fun to watch. A lot of finishes. Actually, 3 first-round finishes, which you don't see that often in the Contender Series. So, yeah, I think it was a good card, and definitely worth watching if you missed it. All right, so I have some fight outs to talk about, but one piece of news I want to mention here quickly. John Lineker 2 days ago actually signed with One Championship, and I talked about it on yesterday's podcast. Guillermo Cruz actually did, for MMA Fighting, he did an interview with John Lineker yesterday, and John Lineker called out 2 names. Demetrious Johnson and Bibiano Fernandes. And I like both these fights for him, to be honest with you. I think they're both amazing fights. First off, I'm still a fan of John Lineker. I know he had some issues with the UFC with making weight, with getting the cut over his eye before the Rob Font fight. I understand he was frustrating the matchmakers, but they let go of a really good fighter. And I think it's still a mistake. It's one of those things the UFC does sometimes. They can be petty about things, and I think this was another instance of that. The guy is really good, and I think he's going to be a really good signing for one championship. As soon as they let him go a couple weeks ago, I mentioned, hey, I want to see a fight Demetrious Johnson or Kyoji Horiguchi. Now he's calling Demetrious Johnson out. Now he's a chance to fight him. Demetrious is in the tournament right now, so he'll have to wait till he's finished that. But once that tournament's over, I'd love to see John Lineker fight Demetrious Johnson. Hopefully they can figure out the weight class stuff. I know there's like different weight classes in one championship. There are different weight cutting regulations, but I'm sure there's a way to find a way to make that match between DJ and Lineker. That's a fight I wanted to see in the UFC for a long time. I think a few years ago, a lot of us thought, maybe like 5 years ago, a lot of us thought that John Lineker would be the one guy that could actually give DJ problems because he does have legitimate KO power, especially when he was at 125, but couldn't make weight consistently. They had to move up in weight. Didn't get a title shot, but now he actually might fight Demetrious Johnson at some point and won, and I'd love to see that fight. But I also like this Bibiano Fernandes fight, and Bibiano Fernandes is just a fantastic fighter. He maybe, some people think he's on the decline a little bit. That's possible. He did lose 2 fights ago to Kevin Bellingham. It was a close fight. He lost a split decision. Prior to that, he had won 14 straight fights. So, and also he had a split decision against Martin Nguyen and also Reese McLaren recently too. So he's kind of gone to some close fights with guys that he really should be beating. But last fight, he beats Kevin Bellingham by DQ. It looks like they're going to run that back for the 4th time, which, it is what it is. I mean, we've seen 4th fights in MMA rarely, but actually we have seen one before. Andrei Arlovsky fought Tim Sylvia for the 4th time and won. So that was like maybe 6 or 7 years ago before Andre came back to the UFC. So it's happened before, but it's pretty rare. It looks like that is going to be the next fight, and I understand why, Bibiano didn't like the way it ended with the DQ, and I get that. And he wants to, give this guy a chance to actually beat him. So that's cool, but I think that John Lineker versus Bibiano Fernandes would be a fantastic fight. And again, Bibiano, he's 39 now, so he is an older guy, but he's still a very, very dangerous fighter, good submission game. And the John Lineker fight, I think, would be very interesting. So I'd like to see that fight. All right, so now let's get into the actual fight announcements. Fights that actually are happening. And before I get to the UFC ones, there's one in Combati's America that's worth talking about because everyone is. Tito Ortiz is coming back to fight Alberto Del Rio. I mean, what can I say? Tito Ortiz, he had that great win in his last fight over Chuck Liddell. I mean, great is, and he knocked him out, but Chuck Liddell is like 50, so it was expected, even though Tito's lost to him previously. Tito's actually won 4 of his last 5 fights. So he's kind of on a roll right now, but he's still an older guy. What is he, 44? So he's really up there in age now. But he has looked good, so good for Tito. And now he'll be taking on Alberto Del Rio, a.k.a. Don Carlos Jr. He fought in Pride a long time ago, if you guys remember. I have the old DVDs. He actually fought Mirko Cro Cop at Pride Bushido 1. He was wearing a mask, got head kicked. A lot of people thought it was a fake knockout. I don't think so. Personally, I think he just got KO'd. He actually took a long break from the sport. He has taken a long break, I should say. He hasn't fought since 2010. Before that, he had won 6 straight fights, a lot of them by submission, and one of them by head kick, actually. All of his wins as a pro have come by finish. So this guy finishes fights, but he's 42 years old, so and he hasn't fought in 9 years as a pro. And now he's fighting Tito Ortiz, a former UFC champion. I don't know, man. This who knows? I mean, maybe this guy can go and surprise us. I think it's kind of a fun fight for Combachis. I think it's their biggest fight they could make, clearly. But you got to favor Tito Ortiz in this fight. I mean, the guy he's still looking decent, coming off of a couple of wins here over Chuck Liddell and before that Chael Sonnen. So Tito Ortiz is not looking bad lately. And I think he definitely should be a huge favorite in this fight. And I believe Nick Kalikas, my boss, will be doing the lines for that card whenever that fight happens. So I expect the line to come out, and I expect Tito Ortiz to be a pretty big favorite in that fight. A couple other fight announcements for the UFC now. This is a good one. Kron Gracie will be fighting Cub Swanson at UFC San Francisco. That's on October 12th at the Chase Center. That's the same card as Joanna and Michelle Watterson. I like this fight. Good matchup here. I think Kron deserves this kind of step up in competition. He's looked really good in the UFC. Well, he's only had 1 fight, but he looked amazing against Alex Caceres. He's looked good in MMA, I should say. I remember him from Rising a couple years ago. He had a couple wins over Tetsuya Kawajiri, Hideo Tokoro. a couple other guys. He's just a really good submission artist, man. All 5 of his pro wins by submission. A lot of fun to watch. Good on the mic. Only 30 years old, so he's still in his prime. And I think that he's got that Gracie last name, so he could be a star for the UFC if he keeps winning fights. And now he'll be taking on Cub Swanson, and what I believe is a winnable fight for Kron Gracie, to be honest with you. Cub Swanson, 35 years old now, and really on the downside of his career. He's lost 4 straight fights. To be fair to Cub, he's fought high-level guys, Ortega, Edgar, McCanio, and Burgos since the last fight. That was a close fight against Shane Burgos, but to me, he's just on a big decline. I think that Kron Gracie could win this fight, even though the striking, if it stays on his feet, Swanson has a huge advantage in the striking. But if it goes to the ground, this guy's submission game is unreal. And Cub Swanson's been submitted how many times? 7 times he's lost by submission. So this is a tailor-made matchup for Kron Gracie. He gets the fight to the ground, he's going to win by submission. I like Kron Gracie in this matchup. We'll see what happens as far as the odds go. But, I'm hoping that people still think Cub Swanson's got gas left in the tank. I personally don't think he's got that much gas left in the tank. I think that Kron Gracie is the future of maybe of 145. So I think he's going to win this fight, and I like him quite a bit here. What else? Here's another one. UFC Newark. That's next month in New Jersey. Mickey Gall is taking on Salim Touahri. So Mickey Gall, he needs the win here. He's coming off a devastating walkout loss to Diego Sanchez. Just did not look good in that fight. Overall, he's 4-2 in the UFC. He beat CM Punk, he beat Mike Jackson, he beat Sage Northcutt, beat George Sullivan, but he's lost to Randy Brown and Diego Sanchez. The Diego Sanchez fight, he got absolutely destroyed in that fight. It was not impressive at all. That was March, so he said a little bit of time to think about that. Hopefully he comes back better than that, but I'm not 100% convinced that Mickey Gall is like this great talent that I think a lot of people thought he was coming off of Dana White's looking for a fight. I don't think he's a bad fighter by any means. He's shown in the UFC he has submission ability, and he's beat a lot of guys by rear naked choke, but he's got to prove he's not a one-trick pony, and he's going to be taking on this guy Salim Touahri here, who's not a terrible fighter by any means. He's not that bad. Salim Touahri, 10-3 record, 29 years old. He has lost back-to-back fights in the UFC against Warley Alves and Katie Nakamura, but Nakamura was very close, could have won that fight, and he doesn't have really any notable wins in his career, but he's pretty tough to finish, and he's never lost by submission. So I would expect Mickey Gall to be a favorite in this fight, but don't count on Salim Touahri. Just because he's not a household name doesn't mean he doesn't know how to fight. I think he has got a good chance to win this fight. UFC Fight Night 157, that's the one in China in late August. Kara France is taking on Mark Della Rosa. This should be a fun fight. Kara France is definitely a good fighter. 19-7-1 no contest record. They call him Don't Blink. He's on a 7-fight win streak right now. He's actually won 12 of his last 13 fights, so he's pretty good. Looked good in the UFC so far against Elias Garcia and Raleigh Paiva, who's actually not a bad fighter either. And he's going to be taking on Mark Della Rosa. That's the husband of what's her name, Martella Della Rosa. So this guy's he's from a fighting family, clearly. He's 2-2 in the UFC. He's lost to Tim Elliott and Alex Perez. Also beat Joby Sanchez and Elias Garcia. We'll see what happens in this fight. But I like Kara France just based on the fact that he's been winning so many fights lately. The guys look really good. And I'm interested to see what that fight will look like. Also, it's a flyweight bout, according to MMA Junkie. So that's kind of interesting. It says a flyweight bout's been added. That's interesting. So the flyweight division's not dead, apparently. There's still a couple guys left. So Mark Della Rosa was fighting at bantamweight, too small for that division. Flyweight's better for him, and Kara France is a good flyweight. So I guess I'm not that surprised at the flyweight. I guess it makes more sense, but could be one of the last flyweight fights. We'll see. We never really know. Dana White never talks about the division, and we have no idea what's going to happen there. Last but not least, we got a heavyweight bout here between Yorgan de Castro and Justin Tafa at UFC 243. So that's the Whitaker and Adesanya card. Yorgan de Castro is coming off of a massive leg kick knockout win on Dana White's Contender Series, where he finished Alton Meeks with a brutal leg kick and then some hammer fists. He looked awesome in that fight. Great win for him. Taking on Justin Tafa here. Justin Tafa from Australia. He's only 3-0 as a pro. Been fighting since 2017. 3 straight knockouts. Who knows? Maybe he's going to be a good prospect. I'm not too sure. I've never seen him fight. I have to look at his resume for sure, but and watch his tape. But man, I was really impressed with Yorgan de Castro in his last fight. The guy's got good knockout power, good takedown defense, and I expect him to be a big favorite here. So definitely some good fight announcements coming up, guys. And speaking of fights, myself and Cole Shelton will be back in about maybe half an hour to talk about UFC Fight Night 155. We'll be breaking down that entire card. I'm looking forward to doing that with Cole. That's in half an hour. So appreciate you guys checking out today's show. Thank you very much. Again, check me out on Twitter at MMAOB. I'm going to plug some stuff now. MMAOddsbreaker.com. Check out the podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at MMAOddsbreaker.com. I have my opening odds articles out for UFC Fight Night 155 this weekend. I'll have one coming out for Bellator. I'll have one coming out for PFL. I had one yesterday for Dana White's Contender Series, but yes, the PFL won't come out today. Nick actually opened some of the lines for that, so the lines come out early. Finally, they usually come out the day of for PFL. They were out early. The card's tomorrow. I will be talking about that card a little bit tomorrow. And Bellator's Friday. I'll be talking about that card a little bit on Friday. What else? Shirtout.com. My Prime Picks article will be posted, I believe, today or tomorrow for UFC Fight Night 155. You'll see my top picks. But again, you'll be listening to the podcast in half an hour, so you'll see who I like in that card anyways. MMAnews.com, I'll have an article on Bellator. MMA Rings Night, I'm sure I'll have one on UFC Sacramento. And BJPen.com, I always have news coming out there. So once again, guys, I appreciate you tuning into the show. I'll be back in a little bit talking with Cole Salim about UFC Sacramento. Until then, have a great day, guys, and I'll talk to you very shortly. Have a good one.